Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another weekly watch list video brought to you by DeepView. That is the platform that I'm currently using here as my daily driver for charting, screening, watch lists, alerts, all of it. So definitely go ahead and check out the link down below in the description. And as always, in this video, we're going to cover the market indexes, some key stocks here, and also run through my weekly list going into next week with the setups that I have planned, as well as potential entry points, how I manage risk, all of that. So if you do enjoy this video, please go ahead and leave a like down below, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let's dive in. And actually, since it is Easter weekend, I first want to say happy Easter to everybody. And I do want to mention that over at traderline.com, we are running an Easter sale for everything on the website. So that includes private access here. You can see some testimonials down here. I'll pause that. A little bit of what we're offering here. This will be popping up right now as a link, as well as down below in the description as well. And you can see you've got the plans down here, some pretty great deals. And this also goes for our extensive courses over at Taylor University with Stan Weinstein, Oliver Kell, Jared Tendler. This is our own personal class, Ben Bennett, as well as the IPO Masterclass, which we just finished a few weeks ago. Highly recommend all of these. I think these are really steals here, especially Oliver Kell's at this price. So definitely go ahead and check those out as well. With that said, let's dive first into the market ETFs and start with the QQQ. Overall, we're above the key moving averages here. Nice constructive action last week after this pullback. You can see nice action here on Friday, closing the week right near the highs on that day. And we'll have to see what happens going forward. But right now, we're above the moving averages. And let's go ahead and actually load this template right here. You can see we're above the 21 EMA, 50 SMA, and 200 SMA, all of which are increasing. We do, of course, have some overhead supply to deal with, but as of right now, price action is constructive as we held the top of this prior consolidation. Moving on to the SPY, let's go ahead and load that chart. A little bit weaker than the NASDAQ 100, which has a little bit more tech, which has been acting the best, but we're above the 50 SMA, 21 EMA as well, 200 SMA as well. 21 EMA is just about across that 50 SMA, so not quite as strong as the NASDAQ, and we're below kind of this prior high, which on the NASDAQ, we're well above as of this point, and was actually support last week. So a little bit more work to do with this index, but it remains above all those moving averages. Moving on, talking about the IWM, the Russell 2000 index. This is a lot weaker. This reflects what small caps are doing, and also bringing up IWO. Let's bring up that chart here. This is more small cap growth. You can see this is a lot weaker, as well as the IWM below the moving averages. So really, the big caps have been particularly strong, and I'd love to see this, recover the moving averages, get back above a rising 21 EMA, and act as strong as a QQQ as of this moment. But we'll have to see what happens there. And going back to the larger list, now let's run through, one sector ETF, SMH here. This is semiconductors. This has been kind of the leading group. They did pull back last week, and we saw some kind of breakdown. INDI, I think, was one I was watching last week pretty closely. That one broke down pretty strongly, and we're right at that 21 EMA. So we'll have to see whether this can recover, just form out a base here and return towards these highs. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Moving on to some mega caps. Let's start with Apple. Nice constructive action. You can see it found support at this prior level. Nice action on Friday, just trending above the 21 EMA, 50 SMA at this point after it's pushed through this consolidation. And we'll have to see whether that trend can continue. Moving on to Google, really nice action here on the 6th, breaking through this prior high. We're well above that 200-day moving average. The 21 EMA is in a nice uptrend. 50 SMA is rising as well. We do have a fair amount of overhead supply to deal with, and it's heading right into this choppy area. So we'll have to see how it deals with this trading volume. Moving on to Meta, this has been acting well. We had that gap up, consolidation, push through, just nice trend above the 21 EMA. And yeah, nothing much to say, just a nice uptrend as of this moment. Once again, a lot of overhead supply to deal with, and we'll have to see how it deals with this area. Let's actually change this scale over to logarithmic here, and you can see, it's got a little bit ways to go before it gets to 247, but we'll have to see how it acts versus that area. Looking at Microsoft, you can see a nice trend above the 21 EMA after it broke through this consolidation. Really nice power off these kind of consolidation lows, and now we're just once again just in a nice move above a rising 21 EMA, 50 SMA, and now 200 SMA on this as we try to form out kind of a bottoming formation after this pretty strong and significant decline here. Nvidia has been kind of one of the leading stocks in the leading groups when it comes to semiconductors. Really nice action, but we do have a gap down last week. Nice action on Friday, but I definitely want to see it fill this gap and maybe kind of base out under 276, go out for a few weeks, let that 21 EMA kind of consolidate here, let that 50 SMA kind of catch up to price and catch it, and then resume upwards. We've been in a strong kind of steady trend above the 21 EMA with now 1, 2, and basically 3 touches now. So it's getting a little bit stretched. So it might be time for a larger basing period like we saw right here, where we have, a pullback for a few weeks, and then it resumes its move upwards, ideally on volume. So we'll have to see what happens. We're still above a rising 21 EMA, and nothing has changed with this trend just yet. But just keep in mind that, this won't last forever, and eventually we will retest that 50 SMA. Lastly, we've got Tesla. You can see this is a little bit weaker. We pushed hard into that 200 SMA. That has been a resistance area so far, but we're forming out a consolidation under 217. Pullback last week after it looked like it was going to go and test that 200-day once again. A little bit of an expectation breaker back above or back below the 21 EMA and 50 SMA, but we'll have to see what happens. If it can push higher here, that would be a higher low. This is a key level around 176 or so, and then obviously we've got the base lows near 164, but you can draw kind of a steep downward trend line here and see if you can push higher and regain those moving averages. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the market indexes and kind of the major ETFs. The QQQ is definitely the strongest. IWO and IWM have some work to do, but so far the trends, are pretty strong. We're above the moving averages for the most part on all of those, and I like to see those small caps kind of catch up with these bigger cap indexes. So with that, let's move on over to my weekly list, and these are a few names I'm watching this week. So starting with Boeing, we've got a nice prior uptrend above the moving averages. Now it's been basing here for a nice few weeks. We're right at this confluence of the 50 SMA and 21 EMA. It responded nicely off of that on Friday, and I'm watching for a push through this level around 213 or just a nice move on volume towards the top of this base. There's been some wicks up here around 215 to 221. So this is kind of a key level here. If we can push through that and stick it, that would be a good sign that we could start another sustained move and make its way back towards those all-time highs after this decline. So that is Boeing. Moving on, we've got Biomea Fusion. This is a biotech, so keep that in mind. There's added risk here. We had a really nice trend, gap up, and strong push here, plus 100%. This is going to be a faster mover, so you got to manage risk carefully with this one. And I'm basically watching for some type of U-turn setup. Nice, quiet inside day on a pretty low volume here on April 6th on Thursday. Moving on, we've got SERT, Certera, a nice trend above the 21 EMA, and we're pulling back into that area again. I'm watching basically for a push off that nice upside reversal on Friday, and pretty strong action overall. We're at a key spot on a larger time frame, right under 24, so wouldn't mind kind of a base here for a few weeks or so, rest under 24, 25, and then eventually push higher and break out on large volume, but definitely strong price action within this trend. Moving on, we've got Duolingo, another one that's been super strong here after this earnings gap. It deserves a rest, and once again, it will definitely retest the 50 SMA at some point, but I'm watching, just this key level, a little bit of confluence with the 21 EMA. You've got an upside reversal on Friday where it could push higher from that, but ideally we get a little bit more of rest versus this level, a nice kind of shallow cup type shape, maybe a little bit of a shakeout, a handle, and then a push higher. But I am just kind of keeping an eye on this because I do think it's one of the strongest stocks in the market, and you've got really nice estimates here bringing those up. So that is Duolingo. Moving on, we've got EXAS forming out a base here after a really strong uptrend, and I'd like it to be tighter in here. It's a little bit whippy here, and we actually had a shakeout below the moving averages. Really nice action on Friday, outside day, where it retook the high of this bar after undercutting the low, and I basically want to see that trend continue and push higher through that pivot. And you could definitely use smaller time frames to maybe get a little bit more of a precise entry here on this name. Moving on, we've got FSLR. This has been, once again, one of the leaders throughout the past few months here. Nice earnings gap on large volume and now kind of basing out under 217. And you don't yet have an undercut at this level, but we'll see if you can form a higher low or maybe a quick undercut and rally of this key level or below the 21 EMA. Not the greatest action on this bar, and this bar really easily undercutting these lows. But I don't mind more basing, and if you can kind of form one more contraction, that would really set it up nicely and potentially set up a nice pivot right under 218. So that is FSLR. HIMS, basically contracting versus that 21 EMA, watching for push higher off that level. IMO, a lot of oil and gas names look very similar to this. If you bring up XOM, a lot of them look pretty similar to this. Nice action off lows, then basically quiet and tight the past few days. I'm watching this topside pivot, and we'll have to see whether this group is going to kind of retake the leadership from from that rotation out of a few other names and groups. IoT, watching as this base forms here. This is a kind of a key level in my opinion. We had a wedge pop through that, failed now inside day here on Friday. Can it push through that again? And it's kind of forming a base under 21 and above 17, which going over here you can see is a key zone, key level. I wouldn't mind to see it rest a little bit, let that 50 SMA catch up to price, and then kind of form one last contraction, giving us a really nice pivot. Moving on, we've got IRDM contracting against those moving averages, watching for push higher on volume. You can see volume is declining during this pullback. That's what I love to see. Moving on, we've got Lulu, nice big earnings gapper, just watching for consolidation to form. This is the kind of key level I'm watching. I actually tried it here on this day, got shaken out for a small loss, and just kind of watching for another entry within this name. And we'll have to see what happens here. We're in kind of a long, choppy period, but ideally we get a little bit of a character change and it starts trending after it pushes out of this range above 370. Maxon, another solar, you can see pulling back into this level. I'm watching for maybe an inside day, an intraday range to form around that level, and then a push higher. You can easily manage risk versus that. 21 EMA catching up nicely, and we'll have to see whether this can push higher and make its way towards these previous highs. ON, another name kind of similar to Duolingo, nice huge earnings gap, nice immediate push. Now it's kind of settling here, a gap down and negative action on this day, closing your lows. But it needed to shake out, it needed to pull back, and now we're back near that 21 EMA area, and potentially you can manage risk a little bit tighter now that we have had a pullback, and maybe it does an inside day or contracts more over the course of a few days versus that 21 EMA, and then we can buy it as it pushes higher through kind of this area, retaking these lows. So that is ONON. Just watching this one pretty carefully. I think it is a potential leader. Really like the story as well as those estimates down here, and just a name I'm keeping an eye on. PODD, Insulet, forming out of base here right at the top of this HVC, prior HVC here. We had a nice earnings gap on large volume. Now it's pushed higher, settled, and kind of contracting here versus that level. So that's a spot where you can manage risk against, and nice upside reversal on Friday. And lastly, we've got Tesla, which I already mentioned. I'm watching just for a break of this DTL and retake of those moving averages, as well as this prior low around 185. So that's pretty much it for my wider list for next week. Let me know your thoughts down below on the market as well as these names. I'd love to hear what you guys think, and if there's any stocks that you think I should have my eye on, let me know down below as well. So definitely go ahead and check out the sale over at traderline.com. I think there's some great options here for you guys. And with that, best of luck next week, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.